Hello, welcome to the channel Y Stories. Enjoy watching.
Her husband had been working the night shift at the factory for 15 years. One day she decided to bring him dinner, but the factory had been closed for 10 years already. The guard told her something that made her knees give way. Carla Montero sat by the kitchen window, watching as the first rays of dawn painted the sky in tender shades of pink. In her hands she held a cup of cold coffee she had forgotten to drink, lost in her memories. Today she turned 42, and her thoughts kept drifting back to the time when life seemed so simple and predictable. 20 years ago, within the walls of San Marcos University, she had been just an ordinary philology student dreaming of becoming a literature teacher. Carla had always loved books more than people. Books never betrayed, never lied, never broke hearts. In their pages, she found the comfort and understanding so often lacking in real life. Diego entered her life like a whirlwind. Tall, dark-haired, with piercing brown eyes and a charming smile, he immediately stood out among the other students. He was studying mechanical engineering in the technical department, and their paths crossed by chance in the university library, where he had come to prepare for an advanced mathematics exam. "Excuse me," he addressed Carla, who was sitting at a table surrounded by piles of books. "Could you tell me where to find the textbooks on mathematical analysis?" Carla lifted her eyes from the Borges volume she was reading between classes and saw before her the most handsome young man she had ever met. "Second floor, exact sciences section," she replied, trying to hide her sudden nervousness. "Thanks. And what are you reading?" Diego sat down on the edge of the chair across from her, showing an unexpected interest in literature. "Borges. Labyrinths." Carla held up the book cover. "Interesting. I'm more of a tech guy, but I've always admired people who understand art. Maybe you'll tell me about him sometime." That was how their love story began. Diego turned out to be not only handsome but also smart and ambitious. He told Carla about his plans to become a successful engineer, start his own business, and provide for his future family. Carla was captivated by his confidence and determination. They dated for 2 years, and every day felt to Carla like a gift of fate. Diego brought her flowers, took her to the movies, and spent hours listening to her thoughts on literature. He seemed like the perfect man, attentive, caring, loving. In their final year at university, Diego proposed. It happened in the very place where they had met, the university library. He dropped to one knee right between the bookshelves and produced a simple but elegant ring. "Carla, you've given my life meaning. Marry me. We'll build a beautiful family, and I promise you will never want for anything." Carla said yes without a second's hesitation. She believed a cloudless happiness awaited them. The wedding took place right after graduation. A modest ceremony in a small church where Carla's parents had once married, with only the closest family and friends present. Diego looked dashing in his dark suit, and Carla like a princess in the simple white dress her mother had sewn. The first years of marriage were indeed happy. Diego found work as an engineer at Industrial, one of the largest machinery plants in the city. Carla began teaching literature at the local school. Their salaries were modest, but enough for a simple yet joyful life. A year after the wedding, their daughter Valeria was born. Carla would never forget the moment she first laid eyes on her baby girl. Tiny, with dark hair and brown eyes like her father's, she became the center of their universe. Diego proved to be a wonderful father. He got up at night to soothe the crying baby, bathed Valeria, and played with her for hours. Carla watched them together and felt like the happiest woman in the world. When Valeria turned 3, and Carla and Diego celebrated their 3rd wedding anniversary, something happened that changed everything. Diego came home from work unusually excited. "Carla, I have wonderful news," he exclaimed, lifting his wife into his arms and spinning her around the kitchen. "I got a promotion." "Really?" Carla smiled, sharing her husband's joy. "Tell me everything." "They've appointed me head of the night shift. Can you believe it? At just 28, my salary will nearly double. We'll be able to save for our own apartment, for Valeria's education." "That's amazing." Carla hugged him. "But why the night shift?" For a moment Diego's face darkened, but he quickly regained composure. "Well, it's the nature of production. The factory runs around the clock, and the night shift is crucial. It's a big responsibility, but the pay reflects that. The hours will be from 8 in the evening to 8 in the morning." Carla felt a flicker of unease. That meant they would see even less of each other. Diego would sleep during the day and leave in the evenings for work. "And what about us? About family dinners?" she asked. "My love, it's only temporary." Diego gently took her hands. "I'll work hard for a few years, prove myself, and they'll transfer me to a daytime position with even more responsibility. Think about our future, about Valeria. Don't you want our daughter to have the very best? Of course Carla did. What mother wouldn't want the best for her child? She agreed, though her heart whispered that something wasn't right. And so their new life began. Diego truly did bring home more money. Within 6 months, they were able to rent a larger apartment in a better neighborhood. A year later, they bought a car. Valeria attended a good kindergarten and took dance and music lessons. But the price of this prosperity was steep. Carla had, in practice, become a single mother. Diego left for work at 7:30 in the evening, just as she was putting Valeria to bed. He returned at 8:30 in the morning, as Carla was heading to school and their daughter to kindergarten. During the day he slept, and the home became a museum. No noise, no loud television, no guests. Weekends became the only time the family could be together. Yet even then Diego was often drowsy and irritable, blaming exhaustion from his heavy work. 15 years passed. 15 long years in which Carla learned to live essentially alone. She raised her daughter, ran the household, taught at school, and gradually grew accustomed to her solitude. Valeria blossomed into a beautiful, intelligent young woman. At 18, she was admitted to a prestigious university in the capital to study international relations. Carla was proud of her daughter, yet her departure made the house feel emptier than ever. Now, when Diego left for work, Carla was completely alone. She read, cooked, graded her students' assignments, watched television series. Sometimes she met with friends, but not often. She always had to be home in the morning to greet her husband. Diego faithfully brought home his salary, often with bonuses. On wedding anniversaries he gifted expensive jewelry, on birthdays silk dresses. In summer the family vacationed at the seaside. From the outside, everything seemed perfect. But Carla felt terribly lonely. She longed to talk to her husband, to share thoughts, plans, dreams. Yet whenever she tried to start a serious conversation, Diego brushed her off. "Carla, I'm tired. You can't imagine the responsibility I carry. All night I oversee production, solve problems. Just let me rest." Gradually, Carla stopped trying. She convinced herself it was normal her husband worked, provided for the family, and she should be grateful and understanding. At times, doubts tormented her. She noticed Diego had begun dressing better, wearing expensive cologne, new shirts. When she asked, he replied it was required for his position. A manager had to look respectable. Once, she found a receipt from an upscale restaurant in his jacket pocket. When she asked about it, Diego explained it had been a meeting with suppliers. "Carla, are you starting to suspect me?" he said, wounded. "I work day and night for this family, and you interrogate me? That's unfair." Carla apologized and never asked awkward questions again. She didn't want to seem a nagging, suspicious wife. That November evening was supposed to unfold like any other. At Carla's school, a parent-teacher meeting had been scheduled for her 7th grade class, where she was homeroom teacher. Diego, as always, was preparing for work. But at 6 o'clock, the school principal called to say the meeting was canceled. The vice principal, who was to present the new educational program, had fallen ill. Carla hung up the phone and looked at the clock. 6:30. Diego was sitting in the kitchen, sipping coffee before work. Suddenly, an idea struck her, romantic, spontaneous. "What if I come to see you at work?" she suggested. "I'll bring dinner, hot coffee. We could spend at least an hour together." Diego nearly choked on his coffee. "What? Why?" His voice sounded strange, tense. "Just because. In 15 years of marriage, I've never once seen your workplace. I want to see where my husband works." "Carla, that's impossible." Diego quickly shook his head. "The factory is a restricted facility. Strict safety rules. No outsiders allowed." "But I'm not an outsider. I'm your wife." "It doesn't matter. Rules are rules. Even if you were the president herself, without special clearance you wouldn't get in." Carla felt disappointed, but didn't press. Diego kissed her on the cheek and left for work. Left alone, Carla decided to prepare something special for her husband anyway. She kneaded dough for his favorite meat empanadas, made homemade tamales, brewed strong coffee, and poured it into a thermos. Maybe she couldn't enter the factory, but she could at least pass dinner through the guard. At 11 o'clock, Carla got into the car and drove toward the industrial plant. She knew the way. She had passed by several times while visiting a friend who lived in that neighborhood. What she saw left her in shock. The factory stood in complete darkness. Broken windows, rusted gates, grounds overgrown with weeds. It was clear this place hadn't been operational for many years. At the checkpoint, in a shabby booth, an elderly guard was reading a newspaper under the dim glow of a lamp. Carla parked the car and, her legs trembling, walked toward the booth. "Excuse me," her voice faltered with emotion. "I'm here for my husband, Diego Montero. He's the night shift supervisor." The old man raised his surprised eyes to her. "Night shift, senora? This factory has been closed for 10 years. I just keep watch here, make sure no one steals the scrap metal." Carla's world collapsed in a single moment. The guard, who introduced himself as Don Carlos, turned out to be a kind man. He invited Carla into the booth, poured her some hot coffee from a thermos, and told her a truth more terrifying than any nightmare. "Montero, you say?" The old man studied her carefully. "I knew your Diego. He really did work here. Until the factory shut down. Good engineer, I remember him well. But, where does he work now?" Carla could barely speak. Don Carlos paused, clearly struggling with how to deliver the words. "Listen, daughter," he finally said, "I live in the Las Palmas neighborhood. I often see your husband there, with another family. I thought you two had divorced long ago. Flores Street, house number 15. His car is always parked there." Carla felt the ground give way beneath her. Another family. 15 years. 15 years of lies. Are you sure it's him?" she asked weakly. "I'm sure. I know his car, and I remember him well. Tall, dark-haired, always well-dressed. I've seen him with a young woman and children. 2 kids, a boy and a girl." Carla stood, thanked Don Carlos, and walked to her car. Everything around her felt dreamlike, unreal. Las Palmas. Flores Street, 15. An upscale residential complex in the city's new district. Carla had never been there. It was far from her home and the school where she worked. She parked across from the building and immediately saw Diego's car. The dark blue sedan he had bought 2 years ago, supposedly on credit for commuting to work. Carla climbed to the 3rd floor. Behind the door of apartment 12 she could hear voices, laughter, music, children's voices. She stood for a long time, hesitating, then finally pressed the doorbell. Diego opened the door. In home clothes, relaxed, a smile on his face. The smile vanished the instant he saw her. "Carla, what are you doing here?" He tried to close the door, but it was too late. Behind him Carla saw a beautiful woman of about 35 and 2 children, a boy of 10 and a girl of 7. They looked at her with curiosity. "Diego, who is this?" the woman asked, coming closer. This is my..." Diego faltered, unable to finish. "I'm his wife," Carla said firmly. "His wife for 20 years. What happened next etched itself in Carla's memory as the most painful moment of her life. The young woman, who introduced herself as Lucia, turned pale and sank onto a chair in the hallway. "Diego, you told me you were divorced," she whispered. I was going to." Diego floundered, darting between the 2 women, not knowing whom to answer first. The children stared wide-eyed. The boy instinctively clung to his mother, while the girl hid behind her father's back. "Daddy, what's happening?" the boy asked. Carla felt something tear inside her. Daddy. This child was calling her husband Daddy. Lucia stood and took the children by the hand. "Miguel, Sofia, go to your rooms. The adults need to talk." When the children left, a heavy silence fell. Carla looked around the apartment. Expensive furniture, modern appliances, toys, family photographs on the walls. In one picture Diego was hugging Lucia and the children. They looked like a happy family. "How long has this been going on?" Carla asked. "Carla, let me explain." Diego began. "How many years?" she repeated, louder. Lucia answered instead. 15 years. We've been together 15 years. Miguel is 10, Sofia is 7. 15 years. That meant when Valeria was 3, Diego was already betraying her. While she thought he was working nights at the factory, he was building another family. "You told me your wife died in childbirth," Lucia said, her voice filled with pain and anger. "You said you had a daughter from your first marriage who was being raised by her grandmother. And he told me he was working as a night shift supervisor at the factory," Carla added. Diego tried to say something, but neither woman was listening. They looked at each other, realizing both had been deceived. "Where do you really work?" Carla asked. "He's co-owner of the construction company New City," Lucia replied. "I'm the chief accountant there. That's how we met." A construction company. A co-owner. Carla recalled the expensive gifts, the vacations, the money Diego had brought home. Suddenly, it all made sense. "So you're wealthy," she said. "And all these years I've been scrimping, mending socks, buying my clothes in cheap shops." "Carla, please," Diego tried to approach her, but she stepped back. "Don't touch me." Never touch me again. Carla turned and walked out of the apartment. The last thing she heard was Lucia's voice. Diego, I want you to leave. Now. Carla did not remember how she got home. It was as if she were in a trance, automatically turning the wheel, shifting gears, stopping at traffic lights. Her mind refused to accept the reality of what had happened. At home, she sat in the kitchen at the same table where only a few hours earlier Diego had been drinking coffee before work and tried to make sense of it all. 15 years of deception. 15 years in which she had lived in a made-up world while her husband built a real life with another woman. At 6:30 in the morning she heard a familiar sound, the key in the lock. Diego came home, as usual, after work. Carla sat in the same place where he had left her. Carla, he cautiously entered the kitchen. We need to talk. She stared at him in silence. This man was a stranger to her. 20 years of marriage, and she didn't know him at all. I can explain everything, Diego continued. It's not what you think. And what do I think? Carla's voice sounded strangely calm. I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. After the factory closed, I got a job at the construction company. I met Lucia. She was alone, and I couldn't leave her. You couldn't leave her, Carla repeated. But you could leave me in complete solitude for 15 years. You don't understand. I was supporting 2 families. It was very difficult. Difficult? Carla stood up. It was difficult for you to live a double life, and easy for me to die of loneliness? Diego tried to embrace her, but Carla pushed him away. Leave, she said quietly. Carla, you're my wife. We can fix this. I'm ready to end things with Lucia. Leave, she repeated, louder. I love you. I've only ever loved you. Carla laughed a bitter, painful laugh. Loved? You call 15 years of lies love? You had children with another woman, Diego. Leave, she said a third time, and never come back. Diego left, but Carla knew he would return. He had nowhere else to go. Lucia had thrown him out of her apartment, but for now she was alone, and she needed time to understand what to do next. She took sick leave from school, claiming a cold, and didn't leave the house for 3 days. During that time, she carried out her own investigation. In the garage, in an old toolbox, she found Diego's second phone. Guessing the password was easy. Valeria's date of birth. In the phone were photos of the second family, messages with Lucia, business contacts. Carla discovered that the construction company New City really existed and was quite successful. Diego was not just a co-owner, but one of the founders. The company built residential complexes, shopping centers, office buildings. She found documents about bank accounts she had never known about, properties registered in other people's names, investments and securities. It turned out that all those years, while she had been saving every penny, her husband had been a wealthy man. The money he brought home as his shift supervisor's salary was only a small fraction of his income. On the 3rd day, Carla called her daughter. Mom? Valeria immediately sensed something was wrong. You sound strange. What happened? Valeria, I need to tell you something. Can you come home? Of course. My break is starting. I'll come tomorrow morning. Carla didn't sleep all night, thinking about how to tell her daughter the truth about her father. How to explain that she had a half-brother and half-sister. How to say that their family had been a lie. Valeria arrived on the morning bus. Tall, slender, a beautiful young woman, very much like her father but with her mother's character, strong, determined, intelligent. Carla met her daughter at the bus station, and Valeria immediately saw that something was seriously wrong with her mother. Carla had lost weight, had dark circles under her eyes, her hands were trembling. Mom, you're scaring me. What's going on? Where's Dad? I'll tell you everything at home, Carla replied. At home, over a cup of tea, Carla told her daughter the whole truth. She spoke calmly, trying not to cry, laying out the facts as objectively as possible. Valeria listened in silence, and Carla watched her daughter's face change, first confusion, then shock, then anger. He betrayed us, Valeria said when her mother finished. He betrayed us both. What are you going to do? Carla asked. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. Well, I have, her daughter said firmly. I'm going to his office and tell him exactly what I think of him. Valeria, don't. I have to, Mom. Someone has to tell him the truth about what he's done. That very day, Valeria went to the office of the New City Construction Company. Carla tried to stop her, but her daughter was resolute. He has to be held accountable for what he's done, she said before leaving. The company office was located in a prestigious business center downtown. Valeria went up to the 10th floor and demanded to see Diego Montero. Do you have an appointment? The secretary asked. I'm his daughter, Valeria replied. The secretary called Diego, and a minute later he came out of his office. When he saw his daughter, he tried to smile, but Valeria looked at him with such coldness that the smile froze on his lips. Valeria, darling, what a surprise. Shut up, she said loudly, and all the office staff turned to look. Don't you dare call me darling. Don't you dare pretend to be a loving father. Valeria, please, not here. Let's go into my office. No, here. Let everyone know what kind of man you are. Valeria spoke loudly, and the entire office listened. For 15 years you deceived my mother. For 15 years you lived a double life. I have a brother and sister I never knew about. You stole our childhood, our youth, our family. Diego tried to take his daughter's hand, but she pulled away. Valeria, you don't understand. I understand more than you think. I understand that I never had a father. All I had was a man who came home to sleep. The office employees whispered among themselves, some pulling out their phones to record what was happening. Valeria, please, Diego begged. I can explain everything. I love you. You are my daughter. Your daughter? Valeria laughed bitterly. And Miguel and Sofia, who are they? They're your children too. So there's not enough love to go around? Diego turned pale. He hadn't expected Valeria to know the names of his children with Lucia. I want to meet them, Valeria went on. I want to see my half-brother and sister. I want to hear their version of who Diego Montero really is. No, Diego said quickly. They mustn't know. They're just children. They mustn't know the truth about their own father? How interesting. I suppose the truth is so terrible it must be hidden even from children. Valeria turned and walked toward the exit. At the elevator, she looked back. By the way, Mom is filing for divorce. Get ready for court. Carla really did turn to a lawyer. Not right away, she hesitated for a long time, hoping somehow things would sort themselves out. But when Diego returned home after the office scandal and tried to act as though nothing had happened, she realized there was no other way. The lawyer, Marta Vega, was a middle-aged woman with extensive experience in divorce cases. After hearing Carla's story, she shook her head. Senora Montero, your case is complicated, but not hopeless. The main problem is that your husband obviously prepared for this moment. None of the property is in his name. Indeed, as it turned out, Diego had been very cautious. The house where Carla lived was in his mother's name, Dona Rosa. The business was registered under front men. The bank accounts in Lucia's name. Officially, Diego was listed as a simple manager earning $800 a month. But we'll prove these are sham transactions, the lawyer assured her. We have evidence of his lavish lifestyle, photographs of expensive purchases, travel documents. In addition, your daughter is of age but still a student, so he is obligated to pay support. Carla filed for divorce that very day. Diego's family's reaction was predictable. His mother, Dona Rosa, called Carla and launched into a furious tirade. How dare you destroy the family? The old woman screamed down the line. My son worked day and night to provide for you and your daughter, and you repay him with ingratitude. Dona Rosa, Carla answered calmly, your son lived a double life for 15 years. He has another family. That's all lies. Slander. And anyway, the house you live in is mine. I can evict you at any moment. Try it, Carla replied and hung up. The next day a summons arrived from the court. Dona Rosa had indeed filed a claim for eviction. Carla thought Lucia would be her enemy. After all, it was because of her that the family had broken apart. But she was wrong. Lucia called her a week after the scandal at the office. Senora Montero, could we meet? I need to tell you something. They met in a cafe downtown. Lucia looked tired and distressed. A beautiful young woman, she was clearly not as naive as she had once seemed. After you left, I did my own investigation, Lucia said without preamble. Diego wasn't just living a double life. It's much worse. She pulled out a folder of documents and placed it on the table. He has 2 more lovers. One is the secretary at our firm, Paula. The other is a client, a wealthy widow named Carmen. Diego promised Paula he would marry her as soon as he divorced me, and he told Carmen he was single. Carla felt her insides turn upside down. So there were 4 of them. 4 women Diego deceived at the same time. And that's not all, Lucia continued. I'm the chief accountant at the company and I have access to financial documents. Diego is funneling money into offshore accounts. He's preparing to disappear. What do you mean? He plans to sell his share of the business, withdraw all the money, and leave. Possibly to Costa Rica or Panama. He's already applied for a second passport. Carla was stunned. So Diego planned to abandon everyone, her, Lucia, all the children. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because he deceived us both. I lived 15 years with a man I didn't know. My children see him as a hero, and he's planning to abandon them. Lucia clenched her fists. I want him to be punished for everything he's done. What do you suggest? To join forces. I have access to the company's financial documents. You have the rights of a wife. Together we can prove his fraud and achieve justice. Carla extended her hand. Lucia shook it. Allies, said Carla. Allies, agreed Lucia. For the next 2 months, Carla and Lucia worked like real detectives. Lucia copied financial documents at work, while Carla gathered evidence of Diego's luxurious lifestyle. They gained an unexpected ally, Lucia's older brother, Ricardo, who worked as an investigator of financial crimes at the prosecutor's office. When he learned of his sister's situation, he became interested in Diego's activities. What you've shown me are serious violations, he said after reviewing the documents. Tax evasion, asset stripping, possibly money laundering. I can initiate an official investigation. Carla felt as though her life was regaining meaning. For the first time in many years, she was no longer a passive victim of circumstances but was actively fighting for justice. Valeria also joined the fight. She met Miguel and Sofia, Lucia's children. It was a difficult encounter. The children didn't understand why their father no longer lived at home, why their mother cried, or who this stranger was who called herself their sister. We didn't know Dad had another daughter, said 10-year-old Miguel. Dad told us he had no one but us, added 7-year-old Sofia. Valeria patiently explained the situation, trying not to vilify their father but also not hiding the truth. Gradually, a warm bond developed between them. Valeria became like an older sister, helping the younger children cope with the pain of their parents' separation. Diego was not about to give up without a fight. When he realized both of his families had joined forces against him, he went on the offensive. First, he tried to play on emotions. He came to Carla's home, brought flowers, begged for forgiveness. Carla, I admit I made a mistake. But don't 20 years of marriage mean anything? Can you really erase everything we shared just like that? There was nothing between us, Carla replied. Only your lies and my loneliness. I'm ready to cut all ties, to return only to you. We can start over. Too late, Diego. Far too late. When pleading failed, Diego turned to threats. If you persist, you'll be left with nothing, he said. The house belongs to my mother. Officially, I have no money. You'll live on a teacher's salary in a rented apartment. Better honest poverty than wealth built on lies, Carla replied. Then Diego tried to turn Valeria against her mother. He met her at the university and asked to talk. Valeria, your mother has lost her mind. She wants to destroy our family over a moment of weakness. You understand men sometimes make mistakes, don't you? I'm ready to make amends. A moment of weakness? Valeria looked at him with contempt. You call 15 years of betrayal a moment of weakness? I provided for you. You worked on building another life. And you lied to everyone, to Mom, to Lucia, to me, to your younger children. Valeria, I'm your father. Do you really want me to go to prison? If you committed crimes, then yes, I do. You stopped being a father the moment you decided one family wasn't enough. Diego realized his daughter was lost to him forever. A criminal case was opened 3 months after the divorce proceedings began. Ricardo and his colleagues found sufficient evidence of Diego's financial crimes. The new city company came under investigation. Diego's partners, once they learned of the trouble, immediately removed him from the board to save the business. His bank accounts were frozen. Properties registered under proxies were seized by investigators. Suddenly, Diego found himself without money and without a roof over his head. The story hit the local media. Journalists eagerly wrote about the businessman who lived 4 lives. Photos of Diego with different women appeared in newspapers and online. Paula, the secretary he had promised to marry, gave a TV interview. He told me he'd divorce soon and that we'd marry. But it turned out he had a wife, a mistress, and even more women. He promised me the stars, but he was really planning to flee abroad. Carmen, the wealthy widow, sued Diego for fraud. It turned out he had convinced her to invest a large sum in a non-existent project. Diego tried to justify himself, but every word only worsened his case. He blamed the women for seducing him, claimed circumstances had forced him, complained of being misunderstood. I just wanted to make everyone happy, he declared in one interview. Is that a crime? The public reacted with outrage. Online, memes and jokes appeared about the man who wanted to make everyone happy. Diego's family was torn apart. Dona Rosa defended her son to the very end, blaming the women for everything. "My son is a good man," she told anyone willing to listen. "These women seduced him, and now they're taking revenge because he left them." When Carla came to collect her personal belongings from the house, Dona Rosa created a scene for her. "You ruined my son's life. For 20 years he provided for you and your daughter, and you repay him with black ingratitude." "Dona Rosa," Carla answered patiently, "your son deceived me for 15 years. He has children with another woman." "That's all lies. Slander. My son never deceived anyone." The old woman lived in her own world, where her son was the innocent victim of wicked women. Carla's father, Don Eduardo, a retired colonel, came to support his daughter. When he encountered Diego outside the house, a fight almost broke out. "How dare you treat my daughter this way?" The old man grabbed Diego by the collar. "For 20 years she was a faithful wife to you, and you mocked her." "Don Eduardo, you don't understand the situation," Diego tried to defend himself. "I understand everything. You're nothing but a swindler and a scoundrel, and if I were 20 years younger, I'd show you how a man should treat a woman." Carla barely managed to separate the men. Lucia's children were deeply affected by the situation. Miguel became aggressive at school, got into fights with classmates, and his grades dropped. Sofia withdrew into herself, refused to eat, and had trouble sleeping. Lucia had to take the children to a psychologist. "The children don't understand why their father abandoned them," she explained to Carla. "They think they did something wrong." Valeria spent a lot of time with the younger children, trying to explain that they weren't to blame for their father's actions. Gradually, she became their true older sister, a protector and an advisor. The trial dragged on for a year. Diego hired an expensive lawyer who tried to portray him as a victim of circumstances. "My client is a hardworking man who fell into a difficult life situation," the lawyer claimed. "He never forced anyone into relationships. All of the women entered them voluntarily." But the evidence was overwhelming. Financial documents, witness testimony, recordings of phone conversations all pointed to Diego systematically deceiving people. One of the hardest moments was the paternity procedure. Diego demanded DNA tests for Miguel and Sofia, claiming he wasn't sure they were his. "How can you say that about your own children?" Lucia shouted in the courtroom. "You were there when I gave birth to Sofia. You chose Miguel's name yourself." "I want to be sure," Diego answered coldly. The test confirmed paternity, but the process destroyed Diego's relationship with his younger children once and for all. Miguel and Sofia refused to speak to him. During the trial, it also came to light that Diego had indeed planned to flee the country. He had a second passport ready under a relative's name, a rented house in Costa Rica, and money transferred to offshore banks. "This is not an escape," his lawyer argued. "It's international business planning." But the court did not believe these explanations. The divorce case was heard in parallel with the criminal proceedings. Carla managed to prove that the sham transactions transferring property to others had been done to conceal assets from division in the divorce. The sentence was harsh. Diego received a 3-year suspended sentence for fraud and tax evasion. The court ordered him to pay all debts to the state, child support for all his children until adulthood, and damages to Carla for moral suffering. The business was divided among the harmed parties. Carla received a share in the new city company, which gave her a decent income. The house she lived in was recognized as marital property and awarded to her. Dona Rosa was forced to move in with relatives. She never admitted her son's guilt, but legally there was nothing she could do. Diego lost everything: the business, the house, the money, and his reputation. More than that, he lost his children. Valeria, Miguel, and Sofia refused to speak with him. "I don't have a father," Valeria told reporters. "A father is someone who loves, protects, and cares. What I had was just a man who brought money home." After the divorce, Carla felt like she had been reborn. For the first time in many years, she was truly free from lies, from loneliness, from the endless waiting for a husband who was never really there. She began seeing a psychologist to work through the trauma and learn to trust people again. Therapy helped her understand she was not to blame for her husband's betrayal. "You were the perfect wife," the psychologist told her. "You did everything right. The problem wasn't you, but your husband's choice to live a double life." Carla began writing a book about her experience. Writing became a way to process the pain and help other women who found themselves in similar situations. A year after the divorce, she met Antonio, a widower, a history professor at the same university where their daughter studied. He was the complete opposite of Diego: quiet, calm, honest, a man who had lost his wife to cancer 5 years earlier. Their relationship developed slowly. Carla was afraid to trust a man again, and Antonio patiently waited until she was ready to open her heart. "I'm in no hurry," he told her. "We have time. I want you to be sure of your feelings." Carla also opened private preparatory courses in literature for university entrance. Teaching had always been her vocation, and now she could dedicate more time and energy to it. Lucia handled the situation better than anyone could have expected. She moved back in with her parents, who helped her raise the children, and took a job as chief accountant at a large trading company. "I'm grateful to fate for revealing the truth," she said. "Better a painful truth than a sweet lie." Miguel and Sofia gradually overcame the trauma. A psychologist helped them understand that their father hadn't abandoned them because they were bad children, but because he himself had serious problems. 2 years later, Lucia married her longtime friend Jorge, who knew her whole story and accepted the children as his own. Valeria graduated from university with honors and entered a master's program in international law. She specialized in the protection of women's rights and planned to work in international organizations. "Because of what our family went through, I realized what I want to do in life," she said. "I want to help women who have been victims of deceit and betrayal." Valeria maintained close ties with Miguel and Sofia. For them, she became a true older sister, helping with schoolwork, giving advice, and defending them against the mockery of their peers. 5 years had passed since that fateful night when Carla drove to the factory and learned the truth. Much had changed. Carla married Antonio. Their wedding was modest but heartfelt, attended only by their closest loved ones. Valeria was the maid of honor, and Miguel and Sofia stood as witnesses. Carla's book, 15 Years of Deception, became a bestseller. Thousands of women wrote to her, sharing their own stories and thanking her for the courage to tell the truth. Valeria worked in an international women's rights organization and was happily married to a colleague. Lucia headed the finance department of a major company, raised her children, and was happy with Jorge. Miguel became an excellent student, dreaming of becoming a lawyer like his older sister Valeria. Sofia grew passionate about music and learned to play the piano. And what about Diego? He lived with distant relatives, working as a car dealership manager. His attempts to rebuild a personal life failed. The story of his double life was well known throughout the city. His last girlfriend, a young woman who at first didn't know about his past, left him as soon as she learned the truth. Diego tried many times to restore relationships with his children, but without success. They had all grown up and built their lives without him. "I realized I lost what was most precious," he told acquaintances. "But it was too late by the time I understood it." Carla never regretted her decision to divorce. Yes, it had been hard. Yes, she had endured much. But she gained what she had been deprived of for 15 years: honesty, self-respect, and true love. One evening, sitting with Antonio on the terrace of their house and watching the sunset, she said, "You know, I'm grateful to fate for revealing the truth, even if it came so late. Better to start a new life at 42 than to live an entire life in deceit." Antonio took her hand. "Sometimes the hardest trials lead us to the greatest happiness." Carla smiled. He was right. Her new life was built on truth, trust, and genuine love. And that was priceless.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.